Leaders' questions on the Deputy OD.
Tánaiste, I have to first of all congratulate you on the budget presentation. It was really a masterpiece of spin in public relations. But the reality is beginning to dawn much more quickly than anybody could have foreseen. For example, we're reading today. Well, I'll repeat what I said.
Sorry, there's no need to repeat, please.
The publication of the budget was a masterpiece of spin. Now, people are reading today about the nefarious consequences of the cut in tax, the cap on tax relief to people who are paying for private health insurance, and the fact that it's going to increase premium immediately at a time when thousands of people every month are already leaving the system, and at the expense of the already overburdened public health system. The decision to snatch back 135,000 medical cards from people who mostly need them is getting a lot of traction. So the question I want to ask you is this, Tánaiste. In your programme for government, you stated, and I quote, "We will maintain social welfare rates." Now, over the last 3 budgets, the following cuts have taken place: a substantial cut to child benefit, a cut to maternity benefit, back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance cut, respite care grant cut, redundancy rebate abolished, the household benefits package slashed, the budget for supplementary welfare reduced substantially, and finally, in this budget, a measure has been introduced to pauperise the young unemployed. Now, what I want to ask you, Tánaiste, isn't that a cut to the core social welfare rate? Isn't that budget change a cut to the core social welfare rate? I note that one of your colleagues has said that the object of this change was, and I quote, to stop the young from watching flat-screen television 7 days a week. However, on their website, Labour Youth described this decision as, just before it crashed, but I think it's back up again, they described it as regressive, counterproductive and fundamentally unjust. Now, what I want to ask you, Tánaiste, is this. Who do you agree with? Do you agree with your colleague who says it's to stop people watching flat-screen TV 7 days a week? Or do you agree with the youth wing of your own party, who described this change as regressive, counterproductive and fundamentally unjust? And isn't it a cut in the core rate of job seekers' allowance?
Well, this budget takes us out of the bailout. And when you think about it, when you think back to where we started and the worries that people had in this country about whether the state would be able to continue to pay social welfare payments, to what extent it would be able to continue old age payments and secondary benefits and so on, I think that to get out of the bailout without cutting basic social welfare rates, without cutting the old age pension, maintaining most of the various benefits that are available to pensioners and people who are in social welfare payments is quite an achievement. And I think that when people look at this, I think that the question that has to be asked is not, whether this cut or this change should have been made or not made. The choice is between what we have done and what you would have done. Now, in the 4-year plan that you published, Fianna Fáil published, prior to the last general election, you put in a figure for social welfare spending for 2014 next year. That figure is 17.9 billion. This government will spend 19.6 billion in social protection measures next year. In other words, if Fianna Fáil were still in power, there will be €1.7 billion extra taken out of the social protection budget. And what I want to ask you, Deputy OD, and you're the social welfare, social protection spokesperson for your party, is what measures would you cut? What additional cuts would you make in the social welfare bill, in the provision for social protection, to get your extra 1.7 billion? Because if you take what we have done, for example, in this budget, 1.7 billion extra represents about 8 times the various changes that were made in this year's budget. So the question for Fianna Fáil is not to get up and to raise this and to raise that and so on, but to tell the people now what additional measures, what additional 1.7 billion, where would you get, what additional cuts would you make to pensions, to social welfare protection, to various secondary benefits in order to get the 1.7 billion extra in cuts that you said you would implement for 2014?
Thank you. Deputy OD, 1 minute. Thank you.
Tánaiste.
Sorry, please.
Just relax.
Sorry.
Relax.
Sorry.
The Labour Party are getting excited.
Would you please allow Deputy OD to respond? Thank you.
Well, in a word, Tánaiste, I will. Just a sec now. In a word, Tánaiste, in direct answer to your question, Tánaiste, to directly answer your question, I will provide you with a copy of our budget proposals as an alternative to yours. And do you know what they involve? They involve taxing the wealthy, making the wealthy pay more and making the poor pay less. That's what they're about. That's precisely what the Labour Party should be doing. Now, Tánaiste, the last government, Tánaiste, what the last government would have done, should have done, or might have done, or didn't do, is now history. At the last general election, the people passed their verdict on the last government. Fair enough. They passed their verdict on the last government, and they entrusted you with the governance of this country.
Based on your promises.
Based on your promises. So on behalf of the people of this country, Tánaiste, on behalf of the people of this country, who are watching these proceedings incidentally, and are none too impressed with your aggressive, bullying, hectoring response to any hint of a question. That's what they're telling me.
No, Deputy,
on their behalf, I'm asking you this. I'm asking you three simple questions. Firstly, do you agree?
Sorry, would you stay quiet, please?
That the extension of a lesser rate
I don't need help
to
from
other
you either.
people is in fact a cut. The extension of a lower rate to more people is actually a cut in what those people to whom the extension is being given will suffer. Secondly, do you agree that since your government took office, contrary to the commitments you made, there has been substantial reduction in provision for the elderly, to the slashing of the household benefits package, carers, the vulnerable, the old, the ill, and the unemployed? And finally, Tánaiste, can I ask you, can you give the House today, can you give the House a categoric assurance that the cut of 5 million in the subvention to RTE in relation to people who with free television licence, that it will not result in any diminution of the benefit given to those people from social protection at present?
Thank you.
First of all, yes, I can give the assurance that the reduction in the payment to RTE will not result in any diminution to people who have the free television licence. As you know, it is intended to move to a household charge for television purposes for the payment of television, and people who have the free television licence will continue to have a free payment of the new charge. So there is no diminution in that, absolutely. Secondly, in relation to what this government has done in the social protection budget, this government has done €1.7 billion less than what you undertook to do when you were in government. The figures are in your four-year plan. Not only are the figures in your not only are the figures in your four-year plan, but the way in which you proposed to achieve them are in the four-year plan, and you proposed to achieve them by cutting rates, and that includes, I presume, the cutting of old age pensions and other payments. As I said, we have now produced a budget which gets us out of the bailout without cutting basic social welfare payments.
Thank you.
Nobody who is currently on the reduced rate of payment, no young person who is currently on the reduced rate of payment will have that payment reduced. They will continue to be on the payment that they are on. The change that we have made in relation to the payment of unemployment payments to young people has to be seen in the context of what we are doing about the activation of young people into employment and into education and training.
Thank you.
It is this government's view that the place for young people is at work, in job experience or in education and training. That is the best way for them to get out of unemployment. We do not believe, let's be clear on this, we do not believe that any young person should find themselves in a situation that they go onto an unemployment payment at the age of 18 and are still on it at the age of 25.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald, thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
Count Corla, Tánaiste, Budget 2014 is a deeply dishonest budget. It's littered with broken promises. Your programme for government promised not to cut social welfare rates. Indeed, Labour claims that protecting social welfare is one of your main achievements, one of your main reasons for being in government. But this week, you've broken that promise again. And hiding behind the deplorable record of Fianna Fáil is really no defence. You've cut job seekers' allowance for young people, and you've also cut invalidity pension. Now, Tánaiste, these are core social welfare payments, and you've cut them, so you've broken your promise. When Fianna Fáil first cut job seekers for the under-25s back in 2009, what was the response of the Labour Party? Well, at that time, your party said that the cut was offensive, intended to promote emigration, and your party justifiably at that time accused Fianna Fáil of putting the squeeze on young people and making them pay for the recession. My, how your tune has changed. This morning, your colleague, Deputy Eamon Maloney, quoted in today's newspapers, justifies these cuts. Deputy Maloney wishes to save the young people of Tallaght from watching flat-screen televisions 7 days a week. So your party colleague is blaming young people for their unemployment. He's accusing them, stating quite openly that in his view the young people in Tallaght are too lazy to go out and work. So Tánaiste, is it now official Labour Party policy to force young people to emigrate? Is it now official Labour Party policy to make young people pay for the recession? And is it official Labour Party policy to blame young people for being unemployed?
It is official Labour Party policy to get young people into jobs and into education and training so that they are in a better position to take up employment opportunities. And that is official Labour Party policy, and it is the policy of the government. And that is why, Deputy, in this budget, we have provided €500 million additional for employment creation measures. That is why we are proposing to employ additional teachers in our classrooms, additional Gardaí, starting recruitment again for the first time in many years. It is why we have provided €740 million in this budget for education, further education and training, so that young people can get the education and training that will equip them to get into the workplace. The place for any young person is not permanently in front of a flat-screen television. It is at work or in education and training. That is where they get the best start in life. This government does not blame young people for being unemployed. This government wants to help young people to get out of unemployment and into employment. And in order to get into employment, and every study or every examination shows this, that in order to get into employment, you have a better chance of getting a job if you the higher the level of skills you have and the higher the level of education you have. And that is why we have, for example, ensured that in this budget that the school system is protected, that the pupil-teacher ratio is protected, so that young people get the best possible opportunity while they are still at school. And it is why we have put a focus on activation, on using the education and training system in order to get people into a position where they are in employment. It's jobs we want for young people, good jobs, well-paid jobs. jobs for which they have appropriate education and training. And that is why we have made and are making the changes in our social welfare system and in our education and training system, and why we are making the changes that we are in the Jobs Action Plan, so that we have a joined-up approach to getting people into employment and providing the education and training for them.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald, 1 minute.
Tánaiste, to get young people into work, you have to create jobs, real, decent jobs. And cutting the safety net for young people and whipping the rug from under them does not get them back into unemployment. And by the way, I beg to differ with Deputy Maloney and with yourself. You see, I don't actually believe that young jobless people spend hours in front of flat-screen televisions in Tala or anywhere else. You talk about your activation measures. Here's the position. 54,000 young people officially out of work. That's 18,000 more than when you took office. Official youth unemployment rate is 30%, and many aren't captured in that figure. Budget 2014 promises a paltry 4,500 additional places for these young people. Last year, you promised a paltry 10,000 places. You only delivered 5. So that's your record in terms of activation for the young. So don't come in here and spoof. When Fianna Fáil cut job seekers allowance back in 2009, they also claimed that they would have these training interventions. They didn't materialise. And you were quick to point that out then. But the same is true today. People need jobs. You need proper labour activation, and you are asleep at the wheel. You are failing our young people, and by cutting their welfare, the only modest support for them and their families, you leave many of them with no option but to emigrate. That's official Labour policy.
Would you put your question?
Why are you forcing our young? Why are you forcing our young from this state to Sydney and Brisbane and Boston and beyond? It strikes me that that's official Labour Party policy, just like Fianna Fáil, Tánaiste. So answer that. Why are you making the young people pay for the recession?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, let's spare a moment now to take a look at Sinn Féin policy. Because when this recession began, 2011, your leader said the IMF should go home and take their money with them, and he suggested that we should default.
Sorry, would you please reply?
In order. No, take your medicine. Take your medicine. Take your medicine.
Deputy, sit down.
What that would have resulted.
Sit down, Nigel.
What that would have resulted in is a deficit of 21 billion, and you wouldn't be able to borrow. Now, a deficit of 21 billion would have resulted in cuts in the budget of 37%. 37% in cut in the budget. A 37% cut in the budget. A 37% cut in the budget.
Stay quiet.
A 37% cut in the budget amounts to a cut of €85 a week in the old age pension. That's what it amounts to. So let's cut out the spoof here. In relation to jobs for young people, in relation to the issue for young people, in relation to young people, this government is creating 3,000 additional jobs per month. We want to accelerate that, and that's why we've provided an additional €500 million in this year's budget in order to get more jobs into our economy. Secondly, we want to see young people in employment or in education and training. And that is why we reached agreement on the youth guarantee, the idea behind of which is that no young person should be more than 8 months either out of the labour force or out of education and training. And we have provided the funding in this budget to enable that youth guarantee to be started and to be put into operation. The position of this government in relation to young people is in employment or in education and training.
Now, before I call on Deputy Daly, could I ask you, please, I suggested those who are constant hecklers to take the morning off some morning and go and watch television and see what it sounds like. to be on television, listening to the roaring and shouting. Now, excuse me now, excuse me. Excuse me just 1 minute. There's a lot of people made a lot of sacrifices so we could come into this chamber and debate, not to shout each other down. Now, would you give the Speaker a chance to ask a question and listen to the answer? You may not like the question, you may not like the answer, but that's democracy, by the way. Now, Deputy Daly, and you, please stay quiet. Deputy Daly, will you stop the heckling, please? Deputy Daly, thank you. And Sinn Féin should learn to be quiet as well as everybody else. Thank you.
Thanks, Count Corla. I think any young person who might be unfortunate enough to be watching this spectacle on a flat-screen TV or a black and white portable might be somewhat shocked to see the leader of the country before us failing to answer any of the questions put to him. You talk about a €500 million investment in jobs and gloss over the fact that that is an equal sum to the amount you're slashing from the public sector wage bill. And, you know, I must admit, Tánaiste, that over the last while you've come in for a lot of stick about how much you've changed since you went into government. And I think that's really quite unfair, because I'd say you've actually been very true to form. I mean, we were told a number of years ago by WikiLeaks about exactly the type of operator that you are, when you publicly stated that you wouldn't stand for a rerun of the Lisbon Treaty and then told them that was just political necessity. Behind the scenes, you did something else. And I'd have to say that your skill for saying one thing and delivering the opposite has been honed into a fine art and replicated by the rest of your team in government. You talk up the fact that you've given GP cards to under fives, but gloss over the fact that you've taken 3 times that amount off the medical card budget. You boast about 14 million in a youth guarantee and say nothing about the 32 million you're axing from social welfare payments to young people. You announced yesterday a pyrite scheme as if it was a great leap forward of €10 million when you announced the same scheme this time last year, but it was €50 million as a first step in dealing with the tens of thousands of houses in that category. And Minister Howlin has the neck to tell us here on Tuesday that past budgets under your term have been progressive. He tells us that nobody is ideologically attached to austerity. Well, if you're not ideologically attached to austerity, what is it then? A coincidence? Because in actual fact, you've taken more money out of this economy than even was demanded by the Troika. So it is an ideological question. It's politically treachery, but it is also not even original. My question to you is, did you get your idea from David Cameron and the Tories? Because David Cameron announced his plan for young people a couple of weeks ago, where he wants to, for under 25-year-olds, remove them from job seekers and from housing benefit, that they should be earning or learning. That's your rhetoric. Now, Tánaiste, my questions to you are as follows. Your government have stood over a revolution in social policy, overturning the benefits fought for by the trade union movement. That trade union movement yesterday challenged you to produce the figures and the research that backs up the waffle you've been given this chamber this morning, to show the research which says that cutting young people's benefits will create jobs and will not lead to poverty.
I am true to form, Deputy Daly, and I'm here in this House quite a long time. I make no apology for engaging with any member of this House, as I have done over the years, in robust debate, but I have never stooped to making an attack on anybody's character, Deputy Daly, and please don't invite me to reciprocate. Now,
Thank you. Can we hear an answer, please? Thank you.
You asked me where we got the idea in relation to our approach to youth unemployment. We have developed over a period of time the idea of a youth guarantee. The level of youth unemployment in this country and in a number of other European countries is too high, and we want to get it down. And you get it down by creating employment, You get it down by providing work experience opportunities, and you get it down by providing the education and training that equips young people to get into employment. We reached agreement under the chairmanship of my colleague Joan Burton at the European Social Affairs Council last February on a youth guarantee. In the course of the negotiation of the European budget last summer, we reached agreement on the provision of initially €6 billion, it ended up being about €8 billion in funding for that initiative. We front-loaded that initiative to 2014 and 2015, and in this budget we are making provision here for the matching funding for that youth guarantee so that we can provide employment opportunities for young people. The approach that we are taking in the budget, is first of all providing additional funding for measures that will increase and accelerate, we hope, the rate of job creation in the country, which will provide employment opportunities for young people. Secondly, to ensure that there is sufficient funding for the education and training sector so that there will be opportunities for young people to get education and training to equip them for the jobs of today and the jobs of the future, and by providing additional funding so that the Youth Guarantee programme can proceed. Our objective is to ensure that the young people of this country get the opportunity of work, which is what they need, and that they are equipped with the education and training which will provide them with the skills to take up those employment opportunities. And for the life of me, I cannot see why you are against that approach.
Thank you. Deputy Daly.
Tánaiste, the only guarantee for young people is if there's a job at the end of it. And by you not answering the question and demonstrating that you've done no research on this, well, I'll use your answer against you. You talk about additional funding. In your answer to Deputy MacDonald, you lauded the fact that you were recruiting, for example, extra Gardaí. And you are. But you gloss over the fact that your changes to the pension scheme is going to result in about 1,000 Gardaí walking out of their jobs. So the net result will, in actual fact, not be any extra job creation. You're taking 500 million out of the public sector wage bill, the same figure that you're miraculously using to invest in jobs. So when you do the sums, in actual fact, and it's not just me saying it, because other people have done research, people who gave you a livelihood when you didn't work in here, in the trade union movement, and people whose subscriptions actually helped to get you elected in here. And what they said was, yesterday, the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, that your policies, which they have researched, will result in the loss of 30,000 jobs. That's your budget. Your colleague and party member, Michael Taft, has said that the allowances and the incentives that you brought in rely on the private market, and there's no guarantee that the targets will be met or that the activity wouldn't have happened in any way. So what I want you to answer to the young people who might be listening to this is, where is your actual jobs for them? Because the only conclusion that they can draw is that they're going to be poorer and they're going to be driven out of this country as a result of your policies.
Tánaiste. Thank you.
Yes, I can show where the jobs are. We're creating 3,000 additional jobs per month. And you can look at the list of job announcements that are made every month by the IDA, by Enterprise Ireland, to see the additional jobs that are being created. We have made provision in the budget to accelerate the number of jobs that will be created. A lot of the measures that are in the budget are targeted at the construction sector, where there's been a very high level of unemployment. We are seeing the live register decline significantly for the first time in a number of years. So, you know, jobs is about creating jobs. You see, Deputy Daly, you know, I mean, we see today, for example, agreement reached, and I'm glad to see it, agreement reached in the United States on their budget, when sensible people on both sides of the aisle in the United States House of Representatives got together and agreed a budget. We saw it held up for weeks when the extreme ideological voices of the Tea Party held up the agreement of a budget in the United States. I'm coming to the conclusion, the more I hear you rail and shout against problems rather than provide solutions, Deputy Daly, that you are the Irish equivalent of the Tea Party.
That completes leaders' questions for today.